What I like about this story is that you just see the really rudimentary, and I mean by that basic needs of a person are met by Jesus. But this guy's needs is that he's deaf. He needs to hear, and he cannot speak well. And if you've ever known anyone that's deaf, they can't speak because they can't hear. You learn how to talk by listening to other people talk. I mean, we at school, I've seen this, we have to give speech services sometimes to kids because, you know, for whatever reason, they have delays in their speech, and sometimes it's related to a hearing issue. And so there's two things that this man needs, in addition to, I'm sure it's affected other areas of his life as well. But here we have just Jesus comes to him, restores his healing, and you find that there's an Old Testament text, Isaiah chapter 35, that looks forward to a day when God is going to make the deaf to hear, the blind to see, the lame to leap like a deer, and that is in the end times, okay? But Jesus is doing it when he comes. So this is what the whole thing represents and is showing us, is that Jesus is ushering in the end of days, and this is just a preview of how he is going to restore all things that are broken in this world. That's what Jesus does. He restores the brokenness of humanity. That's the main point. All right, y'all ready to go home? All right, now let's look at it. Mark chapter 7, and let's look at the first thing I want you to say. It's got two little points tonight. I just want you to see his amazing work. His amazing work, beginning at verse 31. And this is what it says. Chapter 7, verse 31. Again, departing from the region of Tyre and Sidon, he came through the midst of the region of Decapolis to the Sea of Galilee. Then they brought to him one who was deaf and had an impediment in his speech. And they begged him to put his hand on him. And he took him aside from the multitude and put his fingers in his ears, and he spat and touched his tongue. Then looking up to heaven, he sighed and said to him, Ephphatha, that is, be opened. Well, this is an amazing work that we see Jesus do. And he has just departed from this area of Tyre and Sidon where he was with a Gentile woman there, and he cast a demon out of her daughter. Then Mark tells us the travel, the movement of Jesus. And this is a pretty long trip that you see in verse 31. I looked at some maps. I thought about displaying them for you. I know you might have liked that. But Tyre and Sidon is on the west coast of the Mediterranean, where the Mediterranean Sea meets up to a little bit north of the borders of Israel. Jesus goes up there. He ministers to that Syrophoenician woman and her daughter, cast out the demon. And then he goes all the way back to the east on the other side of the Sea of Galilee in the region of Decapolis. And you probably heard this before. Decapolis means 10 cities. It's a alliance of 10 cities. Deca means 10. Polis means cities. So he goes a long ways, and he basically goes around this area of Galilee where he usually ministers. So he goes from Gentiles to Gentiles. Decapolis is going to be Gentiles. So this person, this man, who is, it could be a young man, who they bring to him, is probably a Gentile, and all these other people are Gentiles. Now, what is the significance of that? Well, because Jesus is showing us that he has not just come for only Jews, although he's coming to the Jews first. He has come for Gentiles as well. He has come to minister to the entire world. And even though some are outcasts, some are they're broken. They don't have to be perfect. That's what I'm trying to say. You don't have to be perfect to come to Jesus. So Jesus is ministering to a Gentile who has an extreme handicap. He is deaf. He cannot hear, and he has an impediment in his speech. And so notice how they bring him to him. That's a picture of faith, bringing someone to Jesus. I don't think that they had heard a lot about Jesus, except for it could be that they heard about him from the episode that you see in chapter 5 with the demoniac. Do you remember the man who lived among the graves and the tombs in chapter 5? It's a long story in Mark 5, 1 through 20. There he said, don't tell anyone, but they did. So word has probably spread around. This is the same area. So knowing Jesus a little bit, they bring him one who is deaf and has an impediment of speech. Now notice there in verse 33 and 34, you see how Jesus does it. First of all, he takes him aside, away from the crowd. This is a different kind of healing than what you usually see, except for in the next chapter you see an almost identical one. But apart from those two, those are identical in the fact of it has like 2 or 3 steps to it. Do you remember when the centurion's daughter needed to be raised and Jesus did it from a distance? He didn't have to put his hands on her. He didn't have to be present there to do that. Jesus doesn't have to do that, but for whatever reasons, he does it here. I think why he does it this way is because it's almost identical to what happens in chapter 8, verses 22 through 26. There was a blind man. He takes him aside. He uses saliva. He uses his own touch. And then it's a 2-stage miracle. If you look at verse 24, the man, after he had been touched, said, I see men like trees walking. In other words, I can kind of see, but not real well. And then it says in verse 25 that Jesus touched him again, and then he could see clearly. And so these 2 miracles are similar. And what is in between them, this is interesting, I think, is misunderstanding by the disciples. The disciples are misunderstanding. They're confused. They're not clear on everything. And it seems to be a little bit of a sandwich here of you have these 2 miracles. In between is confusion. And the significance may be that Jesus is showing that he is going to help their spiritual blindness, their spiritual deafness. And so that is somewhat of a process. So, it doesn't come out and say that, but that's a pretty good idea, I think, to consider here. Because these 2 miracles are very unique, but they're also similar. They just kind of sit here in the book of Mark. One of my favorite parts about this miracle is that Jesus speaks the word to the young man, be opened. But it is almost as if he is speaking to the ear. And he tells the ear, be unstopped, be opened. He commands the ear to work again. Now, I don't know about you, but that's a pretty powerful thing to think about, that Jesus speaks to his ears and his ears obey his voice. And the second problem he has, which is coming up in the next verse, so the second thing I want you to see, that's his amazing work, but here's his perfect work, beginning at verse 35. His perfect work. Notice in 35 what happens. Immediately, it was an immediate and complete healing. So he can't just hear now. That's great. But it says the impediment of his tongue was loosed. Well, Let me read this to you. I mentioned it to you a while ago. Isaiah 35 in verses 5 and 6 says, this is what will happen in the end of days. Then the eyes of the blind shall be opened, and the ears of the deaf shall be unstopped. Then the lame shall leap like a deer, and the tongue of the dumb sing, for water shall burst forth in the wilderness and streams in the desert. That's what Isaiah prophesied would happen when God restores all things. Jesus is coming to us and coming to these people here, and he is beginning to show the promise of the restoration of things in the future. And so that's what Jesus does. Notice this also, this reminds us of what Moses said in Exodus chapter 4 and verses 10 and 11. Then Moses said to the Lord, you remember this? "O my Lord, I am not eloquent, neither before nor since you have spoken to your servant, but I am slow of speech and slow of tongue." So the Lord said to him, now here's the part I want you to pay attention to, okay? You know the context of it is Moses is coming up with excuses. I can't serve. I can't do this. I can't lead your people out of Egypt. I'm not the guy. I am totally ill-equipped for this job because I can't speak. And you have to be able to speak to these people to be able to get the job done. I can't do it, God. Well, listen to what God says, and this really this hits a home run with what we're looking at tonight. The Lord said to him, "Who has made man's mouth? Or who makes the mute, the deaf, the seeing, or the blind? Have not I, the Lord?" You know, it reminds us of what we were looking at the other day, is that God is totally in control of all things. We're looking at this on Sunday night with how the path of Saul and the path of Samuel are intersecting. God is in that. God is bringing all that together. Well, also, he's the creator who made the mouth. He made the ear. He made these things work or not work. And so here you have Jesus coming in and making it work. Who does that tell you that he is? He is God in the flesh. He is God with us. And so in verse 35, you see this clear recognition of an immediate healing. And then in the second part of the verse, you see this opportunity to use it. He's now able to speak, and he spoke plainly. Now, that right there is another miracle, because I've seen kids that cannot speak, and it takes years of therapy and to get them to be able to speak. Jesus does it right there. This man has never spoken a clear word in his whole life, and now he can speak clearly. That's a miracle. He changed him like that. So that's the immediate and complete healing. Look at verse 36 and 37. Then Jesus gives a command. And this is not a good example to follow, because Jesus gives a command and no one follows it. But there's a little twist to it. Then he commanded them that they should tell no one. But the more he commanded them, the more widely they proclaimed it. It seemed like that what the verse is saying is that the more Jesus tried, the more Jesus failed. And if you ever wondered, did Jesus ever fail? I guess that he was wanting something to happen and it didn't happen. But I would be careful with that. But anyway, he did command, don't tell anyone. Why did he do that? I think probably for the same reason that he's even in this area. And that is because there's controversy sometimes with the religious leaders. They were sending people up from Jerusalem to check him out, to find out about him, to investigate him. Who is this that's teaching? Is he a rabbi? He's not a rabbi. He hasn't been trained by us. This guy is not supposed to be here. And also because they were trying, if you look at John chapter 6, they were trying to make him a king. They were trying to make him Messiah. And so That's probably why he is even in this region, probably letting things calm down a little bit. And while he's there, he's not trying to escalate the movement to make him a king. And so we don't have to go around talking about this. It's going to be fine even if we don't talk about it. But the more he tried to get them to be quiet, the louder they got, is what it seems to say there in verse 36. So look at verse 37. There is a clear, just everyone agrees, everyone recognizes that this is a healing. It's undeniable healing. They were astonished beyond measure, saying, "He has done all things well. He makes both the deaf to hear and the mute to speak." Well, it sounds a lot like Ecclesiastes 3:11, where it says that God, He has made everything beautiful in its time. Jesus truly does restore. He brings back what was lost, and he works the same way that God works. And so notice there in Genesis 1:31, what did God say in His creation? Then God saw everything that He had made, and indeed it was very good. And so here you see Jesus as that great restorer of things that are broken. I want to leave you with about 3 little things to chew on and take with you tonight. Number 1, there is power, or the same power that's in His creative work is in His healing work. You can't separate, you can't diminish any kind of potential that Jesus has to change your life, because it is the same power that was used in creation. And so Colossians 1:15 through 18 talks about how Jesus is the creator. It says, "He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For by Him all things were created, that are in heaven and that are on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. All things were created through Him or for Him. And He is before all things, and in Him all things consist. And He is the head of the body, the church, who is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in all things He may have the preeminence." So Jesus is the creator. There's no doubt or worries that He can heal and heal our brokenness, since He is the creator. So you see His power there, and you see His authority. The second little thing of application I want to leave you with is this, is that not only does He heal our physical problems, He is a spiritual healer. I was talking to someone today, and they were talking about how empty they feel spiritually. And I told them, I said, well, number 1, God's the only one that can bring revival. You can't bring revival on yourself. God has to bring the revival. And I'm going to tell you, what you do is you pray. You pray, you read your Bible, and God will send revival to your life. So this whole thing of this physical deafness and this physical impediment of our speech, those are real everyday problems that people have. But Jesus also is one who can heal your spiritual deafness. There's people that cannot hear the Word of God because their spiritual ears are not open to it. And so Jesus has the ability to change us and open up our ears spiritually so we can hear what's going on spiritually around us. The third thing I want to leave you is this, kind of mentioned at the beginning, is that Jesus' plan of redemption is not just for the Jewish people. It is for the Gentiles. You see at the end of chapter 7 here, you see 2 events, 2 episodes here of Gentiles being ministered to by Jesus, casting out demons, and healing the spirit, healing the deaf. And Isaiah 35 tells us that this is a picture. This is a glimpse or a preview of what is coming in the end time and when Jesus is renewing his creation. Let's back up. I think you got it. I think you know this stuff. But in the Garden of Eden, a curse was put on this earth. And since that point, we have had brokenness. Jesus has come to heal the brokenness and to restore all things. I'm going to ask our musicians to come and let's have a song of invitation. Song of